From Vermont Public, this is The Frequency. I'm Mitch Wertlieb. It's Friday, August 15th, and here are today's headlines. An overnight shelter for young adults has opened in St. Albans. Stephanie Comstock is with Spectrum Services. She says they wanted a dedicated shelter in Franklin County for young people experiencing homelessness because they have different needs than adults. The shelter is at 135 Lake Street and accommodates people between the ages of 18 and 25. Comstock says during their stay, young people can work on goals.
Our case manager works on those goals with them and then starts coming up with a housing plan and helping them move towards independence.
A QR code on the Lake Street shelter's door can be scanned for referrals. Those can also be found on their website. In Montreal, public health officials say the number of people who died as a result of extreme heat in recent days has risen to 3. CBC reports they confirmed 2 new deaths after one was reported earlier this week. A heat warning was in effect in parts of southern Quebec after several days of the humidex staying around 40 degrees Celsius, which equates to about 104 degrees Fahrenheit. According to health officials, there have been 7 heat-related deaths in Montreal this year. Representative Becca Balint says she strongly opposes President Trump's decision to deploy National Guard troops in the District of Columbia. Trump declared a state of emergency in the district this week. He says there are unacceptable levels of serious crime. The president authorized the deployment of 800 National Guard soldiers and several hundred FBI agents. Balint says the deployment is unnecessary because crime rates in the district have actually declined in recent years. She says the president's actions set a very dangerous precedent.
It's an indication to the American people that he is willing to use troops against his own people. And it's about dehumanizing and demonizing the poor once again. This isn't about trying to solve any problems.
Balint says she's also concerned the administration might try to deploy additional troops under similar circumstances in several other large U.S. cities. And former Vermont athlete, businessman, and philanthropist Rich Tarrant has died. Tarrant was a star basketball player at St. Michael's College in the 1960s. He went on to found the healthcare information technology company IDX Systems. General Electric bought it in 2006 for more than $1 billion. That same year, Tarrant unsuccessfully ran for a U.S. Senate seat as a Republican against Bernie Sanders. Lauren Curry directs the Richard E. and Deborah L. Tarrant Foundation. She says Tarrant was dedicated to giving back to the state.
For Vermont, I think we were really fortunate in the end that this is where he chose to settle because he took what he felt to be that responsibility incredibly seriously.
Tarrant donated millions to causes across Vermont, even after he moved to Florida later in life. He died Tuesday at the age of 83. Coming up, a property once owned by the man who settled Vermont's capital city is being deconstructed and will return to its original floodplain stage. Vermont Public's Elodie Reed has the story after this. To prepare for what's to come, sometimes you have to learn from what's past, and sometimes you have to let go of it. To get ready for climate change, Montpelier is deconstructing an historic home on the property of the city's founding settler, Jacob Davis. The property will then transition to its once and future state as a floodplain. Vermont Public's Elodie Reed has the story.
About 2 miles upstream from downtown Montpelier, there's an island sandwiched between Route 2, the railroad, and the Winooski River. Most of the land is undeveloped, fields and trees. By the road, though, is a 19th century Greek revival house, a barn, and the L that connects the two. Or at least, that's what was there. The day I visit in early August, all that's left of the L is an open platform. There's no roof on the second floor of the house.
Today we're taking the nogging out, so in the old houses they use brick as kind of the insulation.
This is Dave Giese with Deconstruction Works. The company is taking apart the buildings board by board and brick by brick so the materials can be bought and reused.
I think we have all the brick sold.
Really?
As much brick as we can take off of it, so that's great news.
Showing me around the site is Ben Doyle. He's a Montpelier city councilor.
And I'm president of the Preservation Trust of Vermont.
It's a plot twist, but it's the preservation group that's leading the effort to take down these historic buildings, even though they sit on the property that once belonged to Jacob Davis, the founding settler of Montpelier. He's also the person who named the city. Doyle says removing the buildings solves several problems. First, the property's been vacant for more than a decade.
No one wanted to say, hey, we own this property and we'll take care of it.
And then there's the catastrophic flooding that hit Montpelier especially hard in 2023, and that has returned to Vermont every summer since.
I came down here and went through this doorway and there's water in the basement. There's 8 feet of water down on the floodplain. And I'm just this isn't happening.
A coalition led by the Preservation Trust received about $400,000 from the state's Flood Resilient Communities Fund to pay off the property's mortgage and deconstruct the buildings. FEMA is also reviewing an application that would help fully restore the floodplain on the property.
And when that happens, we're going to get dump trucks on site and take out about 24,000 cubic yards of material.
Doyle says this will likely reduce future flooding in downtown Montpelier by several inches.
And when you start to aggregate dozens of projects like this across the entire watershed, then you're really starting to make a difference.
It is a fairly nice-sized floodplain that does have the ability to contribute to downstream flood resilience.
Rebecca Deal studies river systems as a research faculty member at the University of Vermont.
The stretch around Montpelier doesn't have substantial access to floodplains, right? It's fairly well confined in the valley, and then you add on top of that kind of the roads and the infrastructure. And so this project in particular does represent a really amazing opportunity.
Before this property became a floodplain restoration project, it was a home for at least 7 families. These families lived there across 2 centuries, as Montpelier developed all around them. Railroads, a cement plant, car traffic. A historical review of the property gives a glimpse of what its occupants got up to. They drove dairy cows through early morning river fog in the mid-20th century, threw a maple sugar party in 1914, and won top prize for their chickens at the 1877 county fair. Go back far enough and you'll find the founding settler of Montpelier, Jacob Davis. The house, barn, and ell, now being deconstructed, weren't his. Historians think they were built right after his family sold the property in the 1830s. And prior to Euro-Americans displacing Wabanaki peoples from their ancestral homelands, floodplains like this along the Winooski River supported horticulture: corn, beans, squash. Now, it's to a pre-agricultural state that the property will return. Ben Doyle again.
Really, the highest and best use of a floodplain is to serve as a floodplain, and that's what this will do.
Do you think about just giving up history for the future kind of thing?
All the time. All the time. But at the end of the day, it's the reality of climate change. I personally believe preservation isn't about locking everything in amber. Right? It's about how do we take this and make it work for us now and for the future.
A future which will inevitably bring more flooding. For Vermont Public, I'm Elodie Reed.
And now it's time for our weekly look at news from the world of sports. The power shifts in Major League Baseball heading into the last month and a half of the regular season are fascinating. Before the season began, it seemed perfectly reasonable to assume the LA Dodgers and New York Yankees would be at the top of their respective leagues and maybe even headed for a World Series rematch. That scenario is still in play, but other teams in both the American and National Leagues that were not on the radar for top-of-the-class rankings are now getting high grades and bending the curve for everyone else. Nowhere is that more evident than in Milwaukee, a city that just got free burgers for everyone thanks to their brew crew. A local restaurant chain promised to hand out burgers to the entire city if the Brewers won at least 12 games in a row. And with a 12-5 pasting of the Pittsburgh Pirates Wednesday, that feat was easily accomplished. Milwaukee has the best record in either league, even though they don't have a roster with superstar names like Shohei Ohtani, Aaron Judge, or Juan Soto. They're just playing smart, high-contact, low-strikeout baseball backed by solid starting and relief pitching, and right now are looking like the team that could deliver the franchise its first-ever World Series championship. The Brewers have only made it to the Fall Classic once, in 1982, yet that's a step better than the only team in the majors that's never even played in the World Series, the Seattle Mariners. But Seattle climbed within 1 game of taking over first place in the AL West from the Houston Astros this week, and they are looking like a lock for the postseason. The trade deadline deal for Eugenio Suarez is a key factor, and having the league leader in home runs and catcher Cal Raleigh doesn't hurt either. Meanwhile, in the National League, the LA Dodgers are looking vulnerable for the first time in a long while, despite the aforementioned Shohei Ohtani returning to the pitching mound. Already one of the most feared hitters in the game, the 21st century Babe Ruth pitched into the fifth inning against his old team, the LA Angels, this week and made history when he led off that same contest with a triple. In doing so, Ohtani became the first starting pitcher since 1900 to notch a three-bagger leading off a game. Still, the Dodgers lost 6-5, the Halos completing an unlikely sweep of their NL counterparts, dropping the Dodgers a game behind the San Diego Padres for first place in the division. Now, we'll get to the Boston Red Sox in a moment, but first, props to the first place in the AL East New York Yankees. Force of habit. No, it's actually the Toronto Blue Jays who own the top spot and are living up to their preseason predictions, just not in the way many baseball pundits expected them to do it. The Jays aren't just relying on the long ball. They're tiring out opposing pitchers with long at-bats, putting the ball in play, and, like Milwaukee, playing solid defense behind strong starting pitching. As for the Yankees, they are still in the playoff mix, but barely so. Their top slugger, Aaron Judge, has returned after an elbow injury, but he's not healthy enough to play the outfield yet, and he's been relegated to DH duties. And the Yankees may have to place veteran first baseman Paul Goldschmidt on injured reserve pending results on a recent knee sprain. Meanwhile, the New York Mets have lost 8 of their last 10 due to slumping hitters and inconsistent pitching. The only real highlight from the past week was Pete Alonso passing Darryl Strawberry for first place on the Mets' all-time career home run list. As for the Red Sox, they had a chance to take 2 out of 3 from the Astros in Houston, but they dropped the series finale 4-1. There were highlights for Boston, though, especially in Game 1 when Alex Bregman homered in his first at-bat in Houston since leaving his old team to play for Boston. He would homer again in Game 2 of the series, a 14-1 blowout in which new starting pitcher Dustin May dazzled on the mound after his difficult debut. May struck out 8 and allowed just 5 hits over 6 innings. I said after his first rough outing it wouldn't be fair to judge him after just one start, and as pleased as I am with his second, the jury is still out on whether he can really be a dependable option for making playoff starts should Boston get to the postseason. Either way, May is a key X factor in the team's play down the stretch. The Boston Red Sox return home to Fenway tonight to face the Miami Marlins, and holding the second available wild card berth behind the Seattle Mariners. The Yankees were clinging to that last slot just one game ahead of the Cleveland Guardians. And finally, a tip of the cap to Vermont's own Lake Monsters, despite recently bowing out in the first round of the playoffs in a 6-2 loss against the New Britain Bees. Vermont outfielder Sam Cavosa, who also plays ball at St. Michael's College, finished that game an impressive 2-for-4 with a run scored and an RBI. He also led the Futures League in at-bats, hits, and runs this season, and clearly enjoys being a local hero.
I think that's kind of why I've had so much success, is because it really hasn't gotten old to me because how much fun I've been having here in Burlington.
In their 5 seasons since joining the Futures League in 2021, the Lake Monsters have never missed the playoffs. They finished this season with a 40-22 record. And that's our weekly check-in on news from the world of sports. Thanks for listening to The Frequency today. We had additional reporting from Mary Engish, Nathaniel Wilson, Bob Kinzel, and Jen Jarecki. Today's episode was edited by Stephanie Colombini, and our music is by Blue Dot Sessions. I'm Mitch Wertlieb, and I'll talk to you Monday.
These days, there's so much news, it can be hard to keep up with what it all means for you, your family, and your community. The Consider This podcast from NPR features our award-winning journalism. 6 days a week, we bring you a deep dive on a news story and provide the context and analysis that helps you make sense of the news. We get behind the headlines. We get to the truth. Listen to the Consider This podcast from NPR.